Hi guys, this is Round the Table with Josh and Darragh, a conversational podcast from your two favourite idiots. That's Josh.
And that's Darragh.
This is an off-the-cuff conversation between two friends who don't take themselves very seriously.
And neither should you.
Oh, and we don't check our facts thoroughly.
And neither should you.
Hope you enjoy the podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi guys, how are we getting on?
We're back again.
Back for another podcast.
Indeed we are.
How are you, Josh?
Not too bad, Darragh. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. It's been very cold recently.
It's been freezing.
Storm Kira.
Aye.
Do you know what's quite funny about Storm Kira? Before we get right into it.
Okay.
First time I saw like an update on my phone,
Yeah.
it was Kira spelled Keira.
Okay.
And then the second time it was spelled Ciara. Do you think someone just got that wrong? They didn't know how to spell Kira? Or like...
I'm not sure, because it's an Irish name, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
definitely the Ciara one is. I'm not sure if the Ke... That might not be...
Yeah, because
that feels almost like it could be like...
It's not really
like
one of the
Jewish
most difficult ones, is it? Because you got, was it Saoirse and...
I mean, they could have gone for like Siobhan, which is like BH's in it, weirdly.
Yeah.
Or like Neve, which is Niamh, which makes no sense.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Dervla, that's another good...
Oh, that's a good
Dervla's
one.
another good...
That's a good one.
Weird Irish name.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I do quite like all the names that we give our hurricanes in the UK, because you got in America you got like things like Hurricane Katrina, and they all sound a bit more kind of not important, but like a bit more kind of destructive. But then you got in Scotland we've got, was it Hurricane Ballbag?
Well, actually, I've now just like the thought process has just come to me that it probably was meant to be Kira spelled with a C.
Yeah.
Because did they not name them alphabetically? So if the last one was Ballbag, it would make sense that the next one would begin with a C rather than a K.
What was the first one then?
Anton.
Anton.
I don't think it was Anton, but that would be a funny Hurricane Anton.
Doesn't sound very threatening, does it?
What do you think the next one would be? D. Hurricane like Darius?
Darius.
It would be fun if it was Hurricane Darragh. I don't think it will be.
Yeah. Or Don. D.
Don. Just Don. Not like Donny. Hurricane Donny.
Don.
Hurricane Dominic.
Dominic, yeah.
Do they alternate which sex they are, or are they always... Well, they can't always be female because one was called Ballbag. That could be a nice...
I know about a couple of ball bags.
I know a few Ballinas. So, yeah, I know quite a few Ballbags as well, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of been... That's about as much as I've got to report. I was away on holiday for a bit.
Yeah, but you got a tattoo though, didn't you?
Got a new tattoo. Got a matching one, my little sister. It's quite nice, a little periwinkle, which is, for those not in the know, it's a little shellfish that we used to pick with our grandmother off the west coast of Ireland.
Yeah, also known as, is it a whelp?
A whelp.
Whelp? Is that what it's called?
Yelp.
Whelk.
A whelk.
Whelk, yeah.
I'm not like I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of
shellfish,
the creatures of the sea. No, but yeah, it was good fun, man.
Yeah.
You any news to report? Really, nothing much.
Nothing much. No. Just a pretty bog standard week for me.
Yeah, but we're gearing up for having a wee shindig this weekend.
We are indeed. Me and my sister are sharing our 21st this weekend.
You were 21 a couple of years back.
Yeah, no, I think my one's pretty belated. By a couple of years. We got around to it in the end, though.
Hey, what is age anyway? It's only as young as you feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what have we got? What's on the agenda today, Josh? What are we talking about today?
Right, well, I think we'd start off talking about junkies, probably. Just something
junkies.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy going.
Now, just to preface this.
Yeah.
This is not to poke fun at people who suffer from addiction.
Yeah.
It is more about the kind of more cultural phenomena that is the junkie in Scotland, I would say.
Yeah.
Which sounds so pretentious coming with my English accent. Do you know what I mean?
You're not happy to suffer that.
No, but we're not like poking fun at drug use and drug addiction.
No.
We're more poking fun at just
the crazy shit they get up to.
Crazy people, yeah. Before the podcast, we were kind of talking about junkies. One of my favourite videos on YouTube is a video of a man, I think he's on a drug called Yakka, which is this kind of like, it's kind of in North and South America. I don't really know a lot about it, but it kind of people get really, really like out of their heads on it. They basically become like zombies.
It's pretty scary, actually.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
And in the video, this guy basically strips completely naked and runs the fastest I've ever seen a man run on video, just into the back of a car.
Yeah. And he's blurring the camera as he was going. It was crazy.
And he pelts himself into it, doesn't he?
He dives headfirst into the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Or the rearview window, sorry.
Yeah, it's mad. And then there's this woman getting into the car next to him. So she like tries to drive away, and then the guy gets up after smashing into the back of the car, turns to try and attack her car.
Yeah.
And then she just like slams into a wall and he goes flying off. And then he gets up and just runs away.
It's terrible. It's crazy. I can't believe they can honestly do anything. Like we'll be posting these the links to these videos in the description. For your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, please check it out. It's a great video.
Great watch.
I think it is. I think it probably is still to this day one of my favourite videos on YouTube.
Yeah, because it was at my the videos that I love. It just there was this compilation I watched a little while ago that I just keep showing everyone I can. I think it was called Junkies Can Do Anything, and it's just there was a guy I think fell off a 3-story building, landed on top of a car, glass smashed everywhere. And he just steps off and walks off into the distance, into the sunset. And he's perfectly fine, just brushes himself off.
How do you get any sort of view of him falling off the building?
No, you just see him suddenly just appear in camera shot, kind of as he's kind of midway down.
It's mental.
No, it's terrible. And then there's a bunch of other ones with the guy walking through the street just on fire.
I haven't seen that one, but that sounds ridiculous.
There's no kind of like context given. It just cuts straight in and he's on fire. I think he like falls into a car or something. But they they get up some crazy shit, don't they?
But it is interesting to see how creative
they can get with it.
They can get in the pursuit of
drugs,
basically. Have you seen the video of the guy who like plays his teeth?
Yeah.
It looks painful. He doesn't have a lot of teeth either.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the orchestral rendition he could do with a full mouth of teeth.
He's only got flat notes, unfortunately.
Everything he plays is minors. It's a bit depressing. He can't really do any upbeat tunes.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, man.
It makes you wonder, because remember we were talking about this outside where we said we weren't sure whether it's the drugs that kind of give them this kind of singular focus that allows them to do this kind of crazy shit with the guys fucking reaching however many miles an hour it was when he was running around.
I kind of said, is it that when you're on some of these like crazier drugs that seem to make people do these crazy things that you literally cannot think about anything else, be that pain or who you even are. You're so singular, so primal, so instinctual. Because I mean, and as I said, we will link the video because you have to watch it. This guy literally runs so fast. Like they have it on CCTV, and if you blink, you'd miss it.
You see him break the sound barrier.
Basically, he's just pelting it, absolutely pelting it.
Yeah.
But junkies they're interesting. Did you have something that you were going to bring into the debate when we were outside?
Yeah, because I was thinking, makes you wonder with kind of people when they get into these kind of crazy shenanigans, but they come out completely like unhurt and they're absolutely fine. Makes you wonder whether it's the drug kind of changing, not changing their body, but maybe like just changing the way that they go into these like these incidents. Because I know that with alcohol, for example, if you're in a car crash and you're drunk and you hit into someone that isn't drunk, you're actually going to come out better off, just because of like I think it's because your body, like, you don't brace for like, the impact, so like you're just kind of like a rag doll, which is like the way to do it, whereas the other people, they're terrified, so they'll kind of like go into it like tensely, and then that's when they end up breaking things.
I guess that if the drug is a relaxant, then especially alcohol is a good example, then I imagine, you know, there are so many times me personally and a load of other people have like fallen over drunk, and you wake up and you're not in as much pain, or you've almost forgotten the pain,
or you're just concentrating on the hangover.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a different pain. You know, that's why they say if you like cut yourself, you should stub your toe or whatever, and you'll forget about the cut. I've heard things about that. Like,
something like that.
I think that it's unfair to say that all these shenanigans that people get into when they're in crazy states, they walk away from.
Yeah.
I mean, they make
sure
they make good YouTube videos, but I'm sure there's a lot where it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, probably it will. Maybe it's also kind of like a mind over matter thing. If you hurt yourself when you're completely sober and aware, you're more likely to concentrate on it. Whereas if it's not, if you are as singular as we're thinking about it, these junkies, then maybe they're not concentrating on that stuff.
Yeah. Perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's like, as well, which is quite interesting. Apparently, if you get like really badly hurt and while you're drunk, apparently the alcohol, something like running through your blood, actually kind of like sterilizes all the wounds, or like helps with kind of recovery. So like if you hurt yourself when you're drunk, you actually recover quicker than if you were sober as well, which is really weird.
How drunk though do you have to be to have enough alcohol in your blood to
your blood alcohol
sterilize? Because isn't it like an unfit amount of alcohol in your blood to drive is like 0.1% or something?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it depends on where you go, because I think in the UK it used to be, I think it was like a pint or something, and now it's like, I think it's like half pint or something now, isn't it? Or
I think in Scotland there's a no drink policy. If you get pulled over, I think in England, I think it's a little bit more lenient, but the drinking laws are just a lot harsher up here.
Yeah,
like I remember when we first moved up here for uni, the whole going into a shop after 10 o'clock to try and buy beers and you couldn't get it, and I remember being like, why is this the case? And then it was explained that there was a little bit of a drink problem in Scotland, just
a tad.
Yeah, but I'm saying like, what was it? It's like a unit of alcohol gets processed by your body every hour or something. So if you have a pint, you need to wait 2 hours because a pint's 2 units. Supposedly, that's the maths before you drive. Yeah. But how many pints do you have to have before your blood sterilises wounds, Josh? Where have you read this?
I don't know. This was a while ago. I seem to remember hearing about it. But
did you hear it off like a really friendly landlord? like not like a pub landlord. Do you know what I mean? Like a publican who's just like, here mate, you like, oh, I'm a bit sore, I shouldn't drink. And he's like, I tell you what, if you drink, it actually sterilises the wounds.
Buy some more pints.
Yeah, that sounds like a marketing technique.
Yeah,
like, completely.
Maybe actually, I don't know. That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. Moving on to a more serious topic today.
So yeah, this is something we've been doing a bit of reading up about. You sent me some of the reading material, so it's something that we've also talked about in some of our conversations before we knew that we were going to do the podcast, and some of the conversations that actually pushed us towards doing it and thinking that it would be a worthwhile endeavour. Yeah. We've talked about this before, so do you want to preface it a bit? It's what you brought it to the table. I feel like you should preface it. So
yeah, no, it's just kind of this whole idea of kind of democracy is dying, basically, and there's a bunch of really really interesting papers that we'll be linking in the description as well, which basically kind of describe how the current environment that we have right now. And even in the article, they say that it's like human nature. It goes against kind of this whole idea of democracy, because we instinctively kind of we look for things to kind of agree with our biases, and when we don't, we kind of become more like entrenched in our kind of personal views. You see this a lot more kind of nowadays, with this kind of like a division between kind of political kind of ideologies, or even just kind of different camps of the political sphere.
My kind of reading of it, sorry to cut you up there, but my kind of reading of it was basically, it was what's his first name? Rosenberg?
Yeah, Rosenberg, I think it was.
Rosenberg's his surname, I can't remember what
Sean Rosenberg.
Sean Rosenberg. It was writing about, it was a convention for political science, or political psychology. Yeah. And Sean Rosenberg, who's very respected in the field, has been working on it for a long time, had his first major kind of publication in like 85. Yeah. So he's always been doing it for a while. His analysis was that democracy and democratic rule was essentially if we really strip it down, was too much work for the average person. Yeah. And even, he argued, too much work for anyone. because democracy is built on the idea that the individual can think for themselves.
Yeah.
But realistically, thinking for yourself is too difficult. And I totally agree.
It's like, have you seen the film Vice, all about Dick Cheney?
I haven't. I've been meaning to see it, but
it's good. It's quite good, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I was about to say I like Christian Bale. I don't like Christian Bale.
Do you not?
As a person, I think he's a really good actor. I think he's a nutter.
Yeah, but also are all kind of actors. So
yeah,
you kind of have to kind of be in a bit of a strange person to go into it, because it's all kind of like seeking approval and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. But back to the point you're going to make about Vice.
Sorry. But basically in Vice, there's a bit where they kind of at the beginning where the kind of narrator's speaking, saying how something like this happened, how basically someone like just like Dick Cheney suddenly kind of became the most powerful man in America for like a short period. And it's basically how kind of nowadays, with the kind of system we have, like as this kind of like society, people are kind of working more, and so that they're kind of the time that they get off, they want to spend less time kind of thinking about kind of politics and stuff like that. They just want to go out and party, and so they don't ever kind of this is kind of how a situation like this can happen, where basically kind of democracy starts to die because people aren't really that interested in it all, and it's all quite, like you said, it's all very kind of like you have to really go into the reading to kind of really understand what's going on, and it's kind of you kind of have to just trust what your politicians are saying now, because a lot of people don't really know what's happening.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
getting
really
harder and harder.
Because so I haven't seen that film, so I haven't heard of that part of it, but like building on the fact that the analysis from Rosenberg was that it was too difficult. It's too difficult for us to kind of be able to follow consistently the democratic process. It kind of does make sense. Going back in time, when I talked to like my parents and my grandparents, it seemed that people had more leisure time to an extent. I mean, they did work very hard, but maybe not as much now. Or if they worked about the same time, they maybe had less hobbies, and so a lot more time was spent sat. And we've talked about like the hearth and the community sat around talking about these things. Whenever my dad loves talking about politics. He would talk about politics at any given point. And I do like talking to him about it quite a lot as well. But sometimes I find myself actually like totally. This is kind of a bit of like a epiphany moment for me, having these conversations with my dad and being like, do you know what? I've done so much today. I don't want to have to think about Brexit.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, I might have worked, 12-hour shifts, and I come home. The last thing I want to do is like engage further in something that is reasonably complex. And that makes so much sense. So that was what they said at the beginning of Vice. Yeah,
they're basically saying that's how he was able to kind of like come in out of the shadows, and no one knew what was going on. Basically, it's just because people were too kind of occupied during the day, and then at night all they want to do is kind of go out and drink and party. They don't want to kind of sit down and actually start like reading into kind of like politics and going into like the long tedious like documents and stuff like that. They prefer kind of like a quick brief easy thing, which is what they said that kind of authoritarian regimes kind of provide, is just kind of like an easy kind of quick
this forms the other kind of the juxtaposition of the argument. Well, one being that democracy is inherently too difficult, and two being the rise of right-wing and more authoritarian politics is because it's giving simple answers to complex questions. And it's allowing people to have biases and allowing people to make easier choices. And it's also like another thing that we're seeing stuff on social media. There is a lot of divisiveness, yada yada yada, and I'm not promoting it, but it would be a lot easier if you didn't have to worry about what you said affecting everyone. And like realistically, we can't not have bias of some kind. I think
he talks about in the article that we are like intrinsically biased, and we look for things that like go with what we think, and whenever we find something else, we just kind of ignore it. Like I find myself doing that as well. Like whenever I kind of I think something, I'll go on like Google Or if you're trying to, like, for example, trying to prove an argument, you'll go on Google and then you'll keep scrolling down until you find something that kind of goes with what you believe, rather than all the other articles that are there that go completely against it.
But even in the kind of the previous statement that I just made, when I said, like, oh, it's very difficult to, not offend everyone with every statement.
Yeah.
Like an argument from someone else, some liberal wise guy. No. But someone else could come in and say, well, if you are, truly unbiased and truly believe in equality and stuff, you'd never make a statement that was that offended anyone. And I think that's impossible.
It is impossible, yeah. Like, I think that Jordan Peterson says, like, to think is to open yourself up to be offended. Like, you can't, it's impossible to kind of avoid offence everywhere you go.
Yeah, and I guess if it, maybe in some situations, by not offending one group, you offend another.
Exactly.
It's very difficult, and I think it is an incredibly interesting time for us as young people coming into the political system.
Yeah. And
we've talked about, I think we've even had the conversation of saying that we believe that democracy was dead before either of us read this article.
Yeah.
If anything, it's confirming stuff that we've already talked about.
Exactly, yeah.
But is it a case of, could it ever have really worked?
Mm-hmm. Well, they said, I think it was at the article, they were talking about how the only reason it was working before is because we had these kind of like oligarchs and kind of like the elite, kind of like they kind of support it. But now kind of we're losing a lot of faith in our kind of systems, or the kind of like, for example, the banks or whatever it may be, that we're kind of losing faith in our elites, and they were kind of the ones that kind of kept us on the right path for kind of democracy. And they said that more and more, we don't really agree with it, and we don't really have much faith in kind of like our political system, especially a lot more nowadays than I guess maybe in the past.
But in itself, when I read that, and I wanted to find out what your opinion of this was, in itself, the idea that democracy was facilitated by a group of elites who ran these so-called democratic institutions, is that not oxymoronic in itself? The fact that it's meant to be about everybody having their own voice, but because the elite class that told us that we had our own voice, we no longer believe in them, the democracy's failed. So was democracy as much ran by an elite class as communism or fascism is? It just looked different. Are they all different forms of the same situation, the same hierarchy, where there is a finite small group of elite, wealthy, influential, educated people who disseminate information to the rest of us, and although like policy may be different, the actual power structures are the same? Yeah,
no, definitely. I would agree with that, especially before, kind of like pre kind of 1900s. Because I think they said something in the UK, it was something like 8-9% of people were allowed to vote in the UK. So it was basically kind of this small group of people kind of had this all this kind of power and these kind of like the decision making ability in the country. And they said something like democracy is reliant on like the people, but the people need to be like informed. And they need to be kind of like well educated. And I think was there something in the article about someone saying that they wanted people with university degrees to have 2 votes.
I don't remember reading that. That might have been in the other article.
Might be in a different
article. I didn't finish that one. But then there is a like correlation between someone being more educated and probably being wealthier. Yeah. So does a class system come into that?
I'd say so, yeah.
So if they say university education should have more than one vote, then are you by going to university, are you buying yourself an additional vote? In a sense.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because it's not necessarily saying like, oh, you have to get first to get an additional vote. It would probably just be, have you gone to university?
Yeah. I think it's just kind of keeping the power in the higher classes, I'd assume.
But there's always been this power struggle against, give the power to the people, take it away from the rich, blah, 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 blah. Democracy was meant to be that, but the analysis seems to be, from what he's saying and what we're talking about now, is that realistically, democracy was as much for the people, in all honesty, as maybe fascism or communism.
Yeah.
I mean, to slightly different degrees, but it was still there was still a small group of powerful people disseminating information. And although realistically people felt like they had more say and they could make change, their votes mattered. I mean, even in the UK, like, your votes they do matter, but because of the first past the post system, it's like so stupid. Like, the year that the SNP kind of first smashed into it, I think it might have been the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And I'm going to roughball these figures slightly, but it was something along the lines of they got 3.5 million votes and ended up with like 50 plus seats in Parliament. And UKIP got 5.2 million votes and ended up with like 1 seat. Now, I mean, I'm not saying I'm pro UKIP or pro SNP. It doesn't matter what party it was. It could have been any two arbitrary parties. But the fact that in the UK, sitting in Westminster, a group that had 150, like 1.5 times as many votes as another one, had, a 50th of or less of the seats. Like, that doesn't seem to be very democratic in itself.
No, definitely.
So has it always been shrouded behind lies, and will we ever really democratic? I think that's something we talked about before.
Yeah, well, because I think if you go back to, like, I guess maybe its purest form, would probably be kind of the Greek democracy.
Yeah.
Like, where basically everyone, it was kind of like jury duty. So, like, you'd kind of get called up to do, like, your year as someone in government, and then do your part, and then when you're done, you move on. But now we kind of got kind of like career politicians and stuff like that. So I say it's a bit more corrupted from what ideal democracy would be, and it does seem like it's all this kind of small group of people kind of consistently having the power, especially with these what do you call them, like when you have like a long, like the Kennedys, for example, where
dynasty.
A dynasty,
yeah.
You get a lot of kind of like political dynasties, like the Bushes and stuff. And yeah, it does make you question whether we ever actually really did have democracy, or whether, like you said, it was just kind of like this title they put on what essentially was the same as everything else. I
think probably, and this is my personal analysis, is that whatever form it was, whatever form of government that exists in the world, there is always a power balance where a minutiae of probably men, probably rich, probably landowning, have kind of steered the ship.
Yeah.
And it might have been under different guises, and it might have looked different, but it might have had different colours in the banner, but realistically it was based around similar stuff. And that's, I think, one of the issues why, I mean, you look at kind of the Conservative Labour issues that have been in the last couple of years, and the reason that Conservatives, I think, have done so well is because Tony Blair basically became so centrist that, like, there was nothing really between the two parties. They basically were exactly the same. So if you get to a scenario like that, then you've got to think to yourself, well, if there's no real difference, they look the same, they talk the same, they do the same stuff, is there any real difference? Are we really being able to vote? It's like when we talked on one of the earlier podcasts about how it was great that Stalin gave women the vote, but, like, they could only vote for one party.
Yeah.
So what does your vote matter in that point?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the democracy, in air quotes, of in like Russia, for example.
Yeah.
Like, it's still technically a democracy, but Putin's gonna be in power for as long as he can. Actually, I think he's only got 4 years left now? I think he's got.
Yeah, but so I think he does this thing where basically he's going to step down and become the president. Oh, Prime Minister. He's the president now. He steps down. He becomes the prime minister.
Yeah.
This, I don't know the guy's name. I can't remember. I read an article on it recently. This guy who's like essentially his puppet becomes the president, but then he'll just run it from the prime minister for 4 years, and then after that they'll switch around again, or he'll kick him out and get someone else in as prime minister. But yeah, I mean, Hungary is meant to be a democracy. It's not really. Turkey as well. It's not really. But then, you know, so one, is democracy dying? I'd argue, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we ever really have it?
Debatable.
Because we've always got our information from, you know, before it was Twitter and stuff, it was like the big newspapers, and when it was the big newspapers, they were all aligned with political parties.
Exactly.
Now, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, kind of like nowadays is a much more it's a very interesting situation, because we say that the people have the power, so it's like yeah, you guys can have the power, but we can control what you guys see, so we're essentially telling you what to vote for.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so it's kind of like, it's like a voting poll station when the guy's holding a gun at you. But,
yeah, I mean, it's not as graphic as that, it's much more subtle, but I think that's just, if anything, that's just how, in some senses, politics has had to become more subtle. And even though now you could argue there are much more grander gestures, you look at like maybe Trump and all the crazy stuff he's done, the way that they're influencing people, I think, has just become more subtle.
Yeah.
And it's, as you say, in a sense, it's a gun. It used to be a gun to your head, but now it's just like individual advertising because of data mining.
Yeah.
So I thought, while we discussed that, and that was interesting, and we'll probably dip back into slightly more, you know, interesting, like, deep debate. Maybe it would be fun if we spitballed some alternatives.
What, to democracy?
Just like, yeah, to how the world is run.
Ooh, okay. Fun little thought exercise.
Yeah, just because, I mean, one of the things that always comes up for me when we talk about politics or whatever, especially when people get very passionate about it, yada yada yada, and they're like, you know, we can affect a change, blah blah blah, we can make a difference. And I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just can be a bit pessimistic about it. But I've often thought to myself, and I ask these people, what would you do? Like, what could you do? But what would you do if you could change stuff?
Well, the one thing that I find quite interesting is a really good book by Plato called The Republic, where basically it's like a dialogue, and he sits down and discusses basically with people what the ideal society would be. And I think that he ends up deciding that that everyone should be split into kind of three categories. There should be kind of workers to produce everything that a society needs. There needs to be soldiers to protect the society and protect that way of doing things. But everyone should be ruled by philosophers, basically. So it's like philosophers should become the ruling class because they feel that's the most kind of rational way to do things. And I think he said, there was something else he said about, I can't quite remember what it was. It was something along the lines that the people who are in the ruling classes should be basically isolated from everyone else so that they can't be corrupted, and they should like only be told stories where there's no kind of like character. Hold on, I can see if I can find it because it was quite interesting. I
mean, just fundamentally, the first thing about that is, if there are three classes, like nowadays, I don't think soldier would need to be as big.
Probably not.
One.
No.
I mean, our army's a lot smaller than they maybe used to be.
I guess maybe more kind of like fingers of the state, basically, rather than soldiers.
So, like police, you mean, and like that kind of
things
stuff.
to kind of keep it running. Protect, I guess, protects. And it's essentially the same thing. It's just kind of protecting the same.
But do you think that like just having three different parts of society is enough? Like, our society's evolved so much.
From
from ancient Greece.
I don't know. See, there's a lot of stuff they talk about where you kind of look back and you think maybe because their society had been around for so long in comparison to how long our society's been around for. Yeah. Like, you makes you wonder whether they've kind of solved what it all was about. Like,
yeah, but then why didn't it stay like that? Why did it descend into the medieval periods?
Well, they died. They went away. It was they were taken over by the Romans, and then the Ottomans under the Byzantine.
Yeah.
the Ottomans and stuff. So I guess.
But like, what would happen if it was like something crazy? Like, if we just got rid of money,
Yeah.
right?
That would be an interesting
Like,
situation.
no money.
Mm.
You could just have what you wanted.
Okay.
Like,
Is that what communism was trying to do?
communism was... I feel like communism was more like everybody's assigned a job, you do your job, and you get an equal portion of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, in that sense, it was similar, but
Yeah.
it was more the fact that you got the same amount of money as everyone else, so no one was better or worse off. I'm talking like just nothing costs anything.
Okay.
But maybe like, I don't know, but then who would work? Who would do anything?
Yeah, because it kind of goes down to like kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and like kind of all this different like business shit where they kind of talk about like motivating people, and like they say that one of the best motivators is money. So like, what kind of happens when you take that away?
Yeah.
From the people, what is there to kind of motivate? I guess maybe ideology. I guess you could maybe instill in them kind of like from like a young age. Like, I think the problem with doing something like that, I know this is just like a thought exercise.
I know, we're just literally spitballing
just
just for the sake of it.
But like, if we were to, I think we'd have to start with a fresh batch of people for this to work.
Yeah.
100%. Because if we just suddenly took people and put them in this situation, you'd end up just like Stalin with political prisons everywhere, because you'd have so many people disagreeing with you and trying to do it a different way to what you have planned out. But yeah, I don't really know what would happen if you kind of took away the whole idea of money.
Because the whole idea of currency
Mm-hmm.
is so interesting. If you actually think about it and conceptualize it, it is crazy. And it was in
Adam Smith came up.
Yeah, well, no, Adam Smith came up with like
economics,
like economics and basically how money affects it.
Yeah.
But the whole thing of like. Like originally it was literally just a barter system, so it was like, I've got a chicken, you've got a pig, or whatever. It's probably not fair trade. Maybe you've got wheat or something. And like, I think when I was reading one of Harari's books, they talked about like the first kind of unit. It was like way back in like the Middle East. The first kind of unit was like a certain amount of like wheat chaff or whatever was like a unit of currency. So it was like, this village owes you as the king like this many, and like when you paid tithes and stuff like that back in the day, you didn't pay in money, you paid in like stuff. And now it's so like linked to money, but it's so superficial. Like, I go to work, right? I get paid minimum wage, which is for someone who's 24 is £7.70. So I go to work, I work for an hour, then the week after I get an email on my phone which says the company is going to pay you £7, £7.70. It goes into my bank account, which is online. I then go to a shop. I then spend £5. I never see that money. Like,
especially now with everything's becoming digitalized.
Everything's contactless. Like, when I was down in London like 2 weekends ago, like, places just like actively don't expect you to have cash. Like, I had cash on me and I went to the bar and like I ordered the drinks and they just like gave me the card machine. Like, in a pub in Glasgow, I feel like they are like on cash or card. Like, they know that most people will pay with card, depending on the venue. If it's like an old man boozer, they'll probably ask for cash. If it's like a student place, they're more likely for people to use card. But they didn't even ask. It literally just, everything's automated. Like, you go and see like street merchants, like guys selling like fruit and veg, like, and sometimes the fruit and veg could be like it's still like good, like market value price. Like, you might be able to get like an apple for like 17 pence. They have like portable like little machines. Like, it's crazy the way money's gone. So if you took that away, what would happen?
No longer king. I don't know, because like,
it'd be really interesting to do it in like just like a small city. Like, to take like
experiment.
Take like a small area where there were like people in different jobs like doing different things, and just see that if like people would be able to kind of, if they'd be able to work together better.
I think would this be kind of keeping the rest of our society the way it is? Kind of. Well, I guess everything would change, but like just kind of same kind of mentality.
I don't know, because I think that the argument which I think you're kind of getting at is basically that our society is so entrenched in money that it would have to change.
But not just like entrenched in money, but like I'd say that before the reason why kind of like bartering and stuff like worked so well is because a lot of people weren't kind of scientifically and mathematically literate. And I'd say kind of nowadays, because everything we do, like if we kind of had similar technology in this kind of example, then people would obviously have to have kind of like a similar understanding of the world and of the same understanding of numbers. And I think that if we were just to go back and be less kind of specific, so say for example we're just like, okay, so your time that you work today, I'm going to say is about the worth of a chicken, for example. So it's a lot less like specific. And I'd say that would be one of the biggest problems, because we'd be
that's really interesting,
because we're so kind of focused on actually like breaking things down into understandable chunks like numbers and things like that.
Yeah, so like if we take the example of me at the job that I have, getting paid $7.70, I can almost attribute an hour of my time
is worth this much money.
Is worth this much money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas they'd just be like, okay, I'd say it's worth about a chicken. So no, I'd say about maybe a chicken and some pork scratching, maybe.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like so it becomes more like debatable, and then then it's also like, what if a chicken is underfed and another chicken is a big fat chicken? Yeah. Like, are they both the same?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So we've almost we're so numerically inclined now, and we have like a. I think it's more than anything is we have like a base, like level of knowing what things should be.
Yeah.
It's like the thing I always ask. If you're asking about how expensive a place is, I always say, how much is a pint of like local beer? Yeah. Like you can go on. There's a thing called I can't remember what it's called, but you'll find it really easily if you just Google. It's called like Costex Co or something. It's a website. Yeah. And you can basically you can type in like average costs in Prague, for instance, and it will give you a breakdown of like pint of milk, like pack of cigarettes, like a basket of goods. And then you can compare it and stuff. But I always like ask like, how much is a pint of beer? Because then everybody will mostly know what that is, and then you can kind of base stuff off that, like other prices. But we have that numerical value across the board.
Exactly. And
the thing about it is, it means that when you go from one place to another, you don't have to relearn the laws of the land.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, as you say about the chickens, like a day's work where you're from could have been a chicken. A day's work where I'm from could have been 4 eggs. Yeah. Like, and when
exchange rates become quite interesting.
Yeah, and then how do you start to work? Yeah. Because then you might come to where I work and be like, I used to get a chicken for this. And the local people are like, well, we wouldn't give you a chicken for that. That's way too much.
Yeah. You know? Not only that, say for example you went to a country where, we don't have chickens, we've only got grouse.
Yeah.
Or like we've only got
pig.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it's not even in the same like family. Yeah. It's not even like a bird.
So how do you equate that kind of thing?
And then
because I think it all becomes opinion rather than.
And are we even in this attempt to barter? Are we just giving units in a different manner? We're not saying we're not saying okay, minimum wage $7.70, a minimum wage £10, a minimum wage £5. We're saying it's 1 chicken or it's 4 eggs. We're just attributing different value to different things. Yeah. So I guess your point really stands. If I come back and I say, what would happen if we got rid of all money? Would that change the way that politics and stuff does? Because
it would have to change the way everything works, because we'd have to literally go, not back in time, but we'd have to completely change the way we view the world.
So the only real way we could do it is, and I'm sure people have written books about this, I'm 100% sure they have, is you would get like a group of people who would agree on a new society, and then we take a load of babies.
Just purge everyone.
Well, no, you just take babies
and
just have them. I think there's actually a book my mum gave me I read a bit of it. I think they made it into a movie or a TV show or something.
No.
And it's basically that principle is that there are all these people who live in this kind of commune kind of situation, and it's about this one kid where when you get to like your 13th birthday, you'll get assigned your role. So you're either like a carpenter or you know you're a teacher.
So they film Ants.
A little bit like Ants, yeah. Or like I think in this specific scenario with this kid, you can become like a seer or like a kind of like, so they're kind of like the philosopher class who kind of guide the people. But it's like it's quite an honour to get that, and he gets that, and then I think he becomes too intelligent, starts to question the society or whatever. But yeah, it'd be weird if we still had that kind of like Ants or like kind of old school classical like Spartan thing of when you got to a certain age, you were then assigned a role.
Do you think that would make people happier? Because like nowadays, it's almost like, do you know, like choice paralysis. Like a lot of people. I remember I was listening to an interesting podcast a while ago, all about this guy. I think he was Russian, and his parents came over from the Soviet Union. So I think they fled from the Soviet Union and came to like America. And like when they first went to a grocery store, they said it was insane, and then they got freaked out because there was just too much choice. And if we were to kind of think about kind of like jobs, or even just like, I don't know, say your destiny, for example, like if you were destined to be something, or you always wanted to be it, like would you be happier being told as a child you will be this, because it kind of takes away that kind of, because you know, like when you're at a restaurant that we're talking about, when you always like those ones where they make the choice for you. You like that. You like handing over the responsibility. Yeah. So it's like a similar thing with like your life.
Yeah.
If you got told, would you think you'd be happier?
I think the issue whenever this has come up in like literature or cinema or anything is the issue that there always seems to be is that whoever it is that is deciding who is gonna, what your job is gonna be, there seems to be that the system is flawed, or the main protagonist is given a role that they don't agree with, or they think they can break out of. I think if there was a genuine, incredibly intelligent system, which maybe something like AI could work out, that could actually pick a job that you would enjoy, then I don't see why it would be a problem. The issue that you'd have to get is you'd have to find a way.
But is this from what age would you say?
I don't know when it would be decided. Do you know what I mean? Because I mean often it's like in like barely teens. But what's to say it's not like you're like 20? Because people are living a lot longer now. Like I understand it in the past if you maybe told what you were going to be when you were like 12, 13, because you're probably going to die at 50. People are dying at like 80, 90, 100 now.
Well,
you could probably,
Sorry, I was just going to say that it's like your brain's not fully formed until you're 25. So maybe it's like you kind of live in this weird limbo where you could be anything.
But why couldn't you go till 21?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you go till 21? You go to school, and then you know maybe you kind of like have a similar system as now. You go to school, you pick subjects that you enjoy, you study stuff. You'd want to get good grades but it's less about getting good grades for like an attainment point of view. It's about getting good grades because the data that will be used from your grades will help the algorithm work out what it is you're going to be. Do you know what I mean?
God, this sounds like some kind of crazy like dystopian future, doesn't it?
Yeah, but if you know, like they're saying that you know, these big data companies have like 70,000 points of reference on us as people. Can you imagine if we allowed them further into our lives and actually wanted them to assess everything, and if they doubled that to 140 or even, you know, quadrupled it to like nearly 300,000 data points, you could potentially accurately work out what it would be that we wanted to do. And then maybe when you get to 21...
Well, that's kind of what they've done. With all those crazy things when people suddenly get something on their, like, and if they go on like Facebook or whatever, and like earlier on they were talking about something, and then it pops up. It turns out that it's not like them listening to you. I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah.
But it's apparently because they know you so well
That feels like an easy right around.
It seems like that. Really I don't know. I was just going to bring that. I was just going to say.
No, keep going. But I mean, it does feel like we're definitely not listening to you. We just know you so well. But
like, yeah. Anyway, but going back to that whole idea of this kind of like overarching like kind of algorithm, kind of observing everything. Again, that's kind of what the Chinese government are doing. And the scary thing, I think I watched a Vice thing about this. The whole point system.
Yeah.
That thing that was in I can't remember which city
Black
it was.
Mirror.
Yeah, it was like the Black Mirror, but they introduced it into a city, and now they've introduced it into like all of China. And there's the company, I think, that is basically sorting it all out, and they're the ones kind of creating the algorithm to watch over China. They call themselves Skynet.
Yeah, from Terminator.
From Terminator, because apparently the guy was such a fan of the Terminator films. He wants to call it Skynet, but he wants to make sure that this one, that just seems.
He wanted to make sure that this one was the good one.
This was the good kind. Yeah.
So he was rebranding Skynet, famous for destroying the human race.
Exactly.
In Terminator.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel that's just kind of like foreshadowing what's going to go down.
I mean, that is fucking mental.
It's
when you
crazy,
think about
isn't it?
That a company that's basically working out an algorithm of how to control the populace. It's named after a company famous in cinema history for destroying humanity. Yeah. And they have to send back Arnold Schwarzenegger to save him.
Or some Chinese equivalent. Jackie Chan gets sent back in time.
Bit racist.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like a big Chinese.
I'd send back
superstar.
Bruce Lee though. I reckon Bruce Lee would be better.
But he was American.
Was he?
Yeah. No, I think Jackie Chan's probably the big Chinese actor. I think Bruce Lee was half Chinese, half American, and I think he grew up in America. I think.
But I think like I'd rather fight Jackie Chan. Maybe not Jackie Chan in his youth actually, because I'm thinking about him now. He's like an old man.
But he can still do it all.
Yeah, he's still pretty tough.
The Foreigner.
He's still pretty tough.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he definitely beat the crap out of us.
Have you seen the film The Foreigner?
I have.
With
terrible.
With the IRA meets
so bad. It makes no. Pierce Brosnan is in it, isn't he?
He does a terrible Northern Irish accent
it's
as well.
So bad. That's
so
a
bad.
terrible film. But anyway,
back to
if you could do it, would it work? And then would you get a scenario where you take a lot of ego out of jobs because it's people just in the place where they're happier, and if they're happier, would you just have a better world as you would? The issue is that how do you prove that the algorithm is completely fair without the algorithm almost being autonomous, and then if it became autonomous, Skynet?
I don't know, it's
because like ultimately, why couldn't you say like, so there's an algorithm that works out what people do for their jobs, and it turns out that it's this really rich family, and maybe they pay somebody at Skynet, be like, oh, what's my son gonna be? And they're like, oh well, because of his profile, we think he'd make a really good. He loves early mornings, and he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty, so we think he'd make a really good binman. And they're like, oh god, we can't have a binman in the family name, blah blah blah. And then they pay them off to change it. Or maybe you'd have to just So
is it based on personality over kind of ability?
It's based on personality, ability, everything that you like think. Yeah. But then also, and this is another thing that I'm thinking of, is like, would you get like the real creatives?
Yeah.
Like, because there is an argument that the kind of real creatives are pushing against the grain. Yeah. Like, what's to say that they're like, personality wise, you'd be like a fantastic like writer for a show, but you just get writer's block.
But see, the thing is, like, in this kind of society, it makes you wonder whether the entertainment industry would really even exist, because I guess it's based on kind of like commodity and like spending. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
kind of films and stuff, especially nowadays, like they're created to make money. So it makes you wonder what would the creative process look like in this kind of in this reality or this nation, whatever. Where
fuck. That's a good question.
Do you know what I mean? Like, would it even be the same, or would we literally just be creating entertainment for like just the masses? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, the argument is then you probably wouldn't create entertainment for the masses. So something like Love Island probably wouldn't exist, because Love Island, in my opinion, and other people who feel differently about it, But Love Island is appealing to so many people because it hits so many like kind of human instinct stuff. It's like they have aspirations to look like these people. Everybody wants to find love, but they also kind of like can kind of laugh or relate or, you know, look at these people and be like, oh, they're so silly, blah 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 blah, or this is like such shit TV, but it's interesting because it's so human, or they think it's human. Like,
feels like a social experiment, doesn't it?
in a sense, it does. So would something like that happen? Maybe not. Would you have like shows that are kind of almost universally appealing but don't really have any substance behind them like that? I don't know, but maybe a creative person would still think like,
but if you're assigned to be a creative, I don't know,
because the issue is like you could probably ask a lot of producers who work on films like, what was the recent film that The Rock was in where it's about like a massive gorilla that fights a dinosaur?
Oh, Rampage.
Yeah. A film like that.
Yeah.
I reckon if you ask some of the writers or producers or like people who worked on that film, when you got into the industry...
It's all about the art for them, I'm pretty sure.
Well, no, but this is what I'm saying. When you got into the industry, did you want... You know, they might have said like, I was so inspired by like 50s French noir cinema. I would have loved to have done... I have this like this script like lying in a drawer about this, that and the other, and if you said, did you ever think you would be doing a film with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who used to be a WWE fighter, where he was battling with a giant CGI white monkey in downtown LA? Is that the creative process that you wanted? They're probably going to turn around and be like, fuck no. But it was going to make money. People like The Rock. He's the big. He makes the most money in Hollywood. People want to go and see him. That was like almost an algorithm of, we need like a couple of things to make people want to go, like a big movie star, a CGI animal, and fighting.
Well, it's like Netflix. Netflix has been run by an algorithm, so they're basically, I think it's like it chooses out of everyone's viewing habits. They can basically decide what's going to be a successful film through an algorithm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like becoming the modern writer, especially for things like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying in this creative, if we flash back to this weird utopian,
I'm enjoying this
creative discussion and say, okay, you've been assigned to be a writer. Say the pair of us have been assigned to be writers, but like we're not held by the restraints of like monetary success. But would that ultimately lead the creative... Would it mean that less people would engage with our work? That's another thing. Because we could then maybe write stuff that was more personal to us. But while it being more personal, especially with something like art, and specifically cinema, which we're both very interested in, does there need to be a commercial appeal for something to be engaging? Does there need to be a part of the creative process where you're thinking, how do I engage? Because otherwise then, if there's no...
Well, just think pre like capitalism. Think of all the different artists and sculptures and stuff that they made. Even just like, you could say the same thing about structures. Like, they wanted to create like these like megalithic structures, for example. Like, they're just kind of things to say like, I was here. And like...
Yeah, I guess maybe there was some of it was just to show how good you could be.
Yeah.
And so maybe then there is an argument of it would become less about the money. It would become about how good can you be. But there was also a huge amount of art that was to satisfy patrons.
Yeah.
So like the money that these artists, often poor artists, were getting money from maybe like, you know, rich widows or rich families, and then they would paint them and they would sculpt them and stuff like that. So there was always a financial incentive. So, but this is one of the difficult questions, because as someone who kind of believes in capitalism would argue that without the financial incentive, that the creative process would just become incredibly narcissistic and self-fulfilling. You know, you would just write stuff that you want to see, and then only a finite amount of people who kind of share your worldview or your understanding would want to read it. But for them to have to share your worldview, would they also have to have seen the same literature, and then that literature wouldn't be present? The other flip side is that if the money was taken out of the creative process, then maybe people could be more true to themselves and wouldn't be looking for this stuff, and then it would be a slightly more genuine experience seeing and feeling art, but then but maybe less people would connect with it, but then also maybe people would feel less weird about connecting with it or whatever. You know, if you've ever been to an art gallery with somebody who's not that into art, it can be like a weird experience. They just don't really want to be there.
Yeah. So there's a lot to take in there.
Yeah, so I realised after I said that, I was like, whoa, damn, slow down.
You let it out, mate. Let it out. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting kind of thought experiment, this. Trying to, like, because what is, like, art then? It makes you kind of question, what is it? Like, what is it all about? Like, is so much of what we do kind of based on the kind of monetary reward we get for it? And, like, because I don't know. I don't know what art would be without all that. Because I imagine it would probably, like you said, become quite narcissistic, and you would create something that you would want to see. But then I guess it depends on kind of like what proportion of the population are creatives, and like how much of it's getting like churned out every year.
And then ultimately as well, there are people who do art to fulfill a creative need, and there are people who do art to share it with other people. And maybe this algorithm, this dystopian algorithm that we've made up, would be able to find. There's probably a need for creatives that are just for themselves.
Well, to be fair,
they would still make good art, but maybe the people that were responsible for the art that was more ubiquitous and more for the common person, maybe those would be those creatives who would do it for others. And then maybe you would weed out some of the ones who do it just for themselves. Yeah.
Because I definitely, whenever I create something, all I want to do is just share it with people.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I write a song, like, I literally, it's like, I just want to just show it. Like, I just want to take it around and show it to people. And I actually, maybe because I guess the kind of, the human mind is still the same in this situation. It's just kind of the society you live in. That's different. So maybe it wouldn't be as different as we think it is. Maybe it would be
this dystopian future
thing, without the kind of commercialist kind of media thrown in with it.
Yeah, I mean, but like anything that's theoretical, it sounds beautiful and wonderful, but
it sounds weird. Maybe, yeah.
Do you not think you'd like it?
I don't know, mainly because just like you and me, we've grown up like this. It would take so much relearning, and I don't know how it would be. If I grew up in it, I'd probably like it or I would be opposed to it or whatever, because that's all I knew. And like we said, when we were taking people into this, we're literally raising them as children to grow up into this idea.
But maybe there's a scenario where, like, we now look at this current system and say that we don't like it. Arguably, there's a scenario where am I 2 years older than you?
No.
Arguably, there's a scenario where a 20-year-old and 20-year-old me, 18-year-old you, I get my role assigned in a year's time, you get it in a couple of years' time, and we're sat having a conversation where we're like, I don't like the fact that it chooses for me.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I don't want to do the best thing for me. Maybe I want to do something else.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of like free will and everything, and it would be different debates that we'd be having. And I'm sure there would be kickback and there would be pushback, no matter what the system is. And maybe that's just the human mind and the human condition to be like anti something
that you have. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
I guess the grass is always greener.
And to bring it back full circle then to democracy and whether it's dying, maybe is that such a bad thing? Is any system that we have going to be perfect? And maybe if it has humans in it, then no.
Well, it would just be like going back to kind of like human, like the human mind, for example. Like, we've kind of evolved to want to kind of stay where we are. We don't like change, like, as people, because, like, I guess evolutionarily, you could look at it like, I'm surviving on this island. I was born on this island and I will die on this island. And basically it's got everything I need. Why would I want to go over to that island? Why would I want to change it? Because I'm surviving right now. If I go out there, I'm just throwing myself the possibility.
To the wind,
exactly, yeah. From myself the possibility that things wouldn't go as well. So I guess like maybe because I think we would definitely be dragged out of the kind of system we're in, kind of kicking and screaming. And I guess that's maybe that's what's happening. Maybe we're so against it because this is all we've known. Maybe there are better ways to do it, but then again, it's all kind of subjective.
And this is a debate that we've had before, and we've had it on the podcast. But even something like, is an authoritarian government where we get told what to do, is that worse than having freedoms but always being depressed by how shit stuff is?
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be the issue of like the power positions being corrupted and such, but if you're in a situation where you are told constantly that like in the Lego movie, everything is awesome, everything is cool, and you're part of the gang, like
team
is it team?
I've seen it too many times.
Gang, so sad. But like, maybe that is happier.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it just because like if you look at it all kind of like objectively, like what is the better system? Like, would communism, like an effective communism, would that be better?
Yeah, but can it be effective?
That's what. But no, but I just if we were to take like an ideal form of democracy, an ideal form of communism or whatever it is, like authoritarian regime, or hell, take it back to feudal society.
Yeah.
Like which were better, and like how do you measure better?
It's the ultimate question, Josh.
Yeah, like I guess maybe the problem that we have nowadays, going back to the whole, God, we just keep going round in loops. That we kind of, the problem with our modern society is that we value how well our society is doing based on GDP.
Yeah.
So we base it on money. That's how we decide whether our society is doing well. We don't take into account kind of people's happiness. We don't take into account literacy rates. We don't take into account I don't know, whatever it may be, maybe diseases, kind of like the how long it takes for someone to get medical attention. We don't take account into that. We just focus on money. And I guess that just shows how intrinsically linked we are to money in our society.
Yeah. Well, I think we've really covered some good points there.
I know.
It's been quite an interesting debate. I think closing statement from me would just be that, I think that the times, they are changing. I don't know which way the wind's going to blow, but I think it's probably going to be a very interesting time, especially for us in the UK post-Brexit, to see what happens, to see where things go, and maybe we shouldn't be too concerned, and we should just
let it happen.
Put down the windows, lay back, and just see where the road takes us.
Crack open a fuzzies.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, man. Just smart casual it out.
No, definitely. It's a very interesting period we're in. It's very, just so much is changing so quickly, and it's just very pivotal. Like we're during the period like we were talking about before. We're during the period where the internet really came into its own, and kind of we're seeing this strange rise of kind of authoritarian regimes across the world, and a move towards kind of nationalism, even though at a point where we think we're so kind of culturally advanced.
And Justin Bieber's got a new album out on Friday.
Indeed, exactly. So many things are changing.
If the world couldn't get bad enough.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's a turning point in history.
Yeah.
14th of February 2020.
Yeah, because it's literally, it's moments like this when you start to actually kind of analyse it all that makes you think that you are in a Truman Show. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe you are.
Yeah.
What's that thing you always say, Josh? The only one thing we know for sure is that we are conscious.
Oh yeah, the only thing we know for sure is that we're conscious, and also, to go quote someone else who I can't remember, the only thing we know for sure is that we know nothing at all.
Wonderful. And I think that's a wonderful way to end the podcast this week.
Indeed. It's been a pleasure, though.
It's been wonderful. That was a really nice chat. Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed the pod. there anything you'd like us to specifically talk about, or you think...
Leave us a comment.
Yeah, that'd be great. And thanks for all the support so far, and we'll speak to you soon.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. For all the latest news about the podcast, find us at RTTW Josh and Darragh on Instagram. Bye!
Bye!